In the history of architecture and construction, women are often seen as exceptions on the building site. Historians tend to say that women were only ever building when absolutely necessary, like during war times when there weren't enough men to do the job. But is that really the full story? Have women really only ever built when there was no one else available? My name is Mariana Moura. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Faculty of Design Sciences, and one of the main goals of my project is to question that common idea and show that women might have actually played a bigger role in building than most people realize.
This is Design Sciences.
Women Building Brazil is a 2-year research project funded by the European Union Horizon 2020 program. It starts with a simple belief that in Brazil, much like in many other countries in the Global South, women have constantly been and actually still are actively involved in building their own houses. My project focuses on how women build in communities where people construct their houses themselves, often using natural materials and traditional methods. I argue that the reason we don't hear much about women in construction isn't because they weren't there. It's because of the way architecture and construction history have been told, that is, mostly through male-centered and colonial perspectives. Architectural history tends to focus on big, monumental buildings and achievements of great, innovative men, and even when we shift our attention to the building process, we tend to focus only on those formal, highly documented, highly designed construction sites, leaving out the everyday buildings that actually form most of our built environment, and where women's work is much more evidenced. Feminist researchers have already done important work showing that women in the Global North were part of construction activities as far back as the Middle Ages. Women have helped organize sites, supplied materials, and took part in specialized tasks. In many countries in the Global South, research shows that women still make up a large part of the construction workforce to the day. Even though they're often hired as unskilled labor, these women help with many tasks that are essential to the building site. Yet, while people have started talking more about gender bias in history, the way colonial thinking shapes our view of construction has received less attention so far. As I mentioned, our discipline often focuses on formal building sites, and that leaves out the millions of buildings around the world which are done with little to no professional support. In fact, if we think on the extension of self-building across the globe, we could arguably say that most of the built environment was done without the architect. Is it not part of architecture, though? When it comes to self-building, research usually focuses on culture and tradition of what's often called vernacular architecture. These studies often mention that communities work together to build, and so women are implicitly included on the process. But we rarely go into many details on their specific participation. We don't always understand what building techniques women use, what knowledge they bring, or how their work shapes both the buildings and the communities around them. My project then starts from the idea that in these self-building environments, especially those using natural materials, women's involvement is not the exception after all, it is actually rather the rule. It began with a case study in a Maroon community in my home state of Minas Gerais, the Quilombo Mata dos Crioulos. The insight I gained during my short but intense time at the Quilombo inspired me to dive deeper into women's involvement in self-building, trying to learn more about other contexts where the practice is still widespread and women can still be found building with earth. So now I will focus on 3 different communities in Brazil where self-building remains a standard practice: the Quilombo, one indigenous territory, and a consolidated informal urban settlement that people usually know as favelas. I chose these places because they each represent a unique way of building, but they also share a long history of collective, self-managed constructions. Comparing them will help me understand both what women builders in each context have in common and how their experiences differ. The overall goal of Women Building Brazil is then to give prominence to women contributions to self-building sites through 3 different steps. I want to recover, analyze, and recognize their construction know-how. I want to register how women build today, understand how they learn how to do it, the materials and methods they use, how their labor fits into the wider social and economic life of their communities, and especially how newer materials and technologies are changing what they do. In the end, Women Build in Brazil is about expanding our understanding of who gets to be seen as builders and what counts as architecture. It's not just about building per se, it's about the emancipatory potential of knowing how to do it. By looking at how women build, how they learn and teach how to build, I hope to spark conversations within communities and in wider society about why their building knowledge matters and how we can acknowledge, support, and protect it.
Universiteit Antwerpen. Bepaal mee de toekomst.